Welcome. I'm Carol Casto. I'm the Deputy Chief Management Officer for Strategy and Future Requirements here at NAVFAC headquarters, and I lead institutionalization of Get Real, Get Better within the command. This episode is a quarterly showcase of NAVFAC's top leadership, providing the reflections and insights on NAVFAC leadership and how Get Real, Get Better behaviors and problem solving is integral to the work they do every day. Sitting with me today is the NAVFAC Pacific Commander and Pacific Fleet Civil Engineer, Rear Admiral Jeff Kilian, to discuss how he builds learning teams. Admiral, welcome. Can you share, hello, can you share a little bit about who you are and your role at NAVFAC?
Thanks, Carol. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you this morning. It's exciting, and so thank you for that. So as folks may or may not know, I have two jobs. I'm the Commander of Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command Pacific, headquartered in Honolulu, Hawaii. I also have a secondary job where I act as the PAC Fleet Engineer. And so in those two capacities, on the PAC Fleet side of my business, I deal primarily with environmental compliance, requirements development for the shore, and CB operations. And on the NAVFAC Pacific side of my business, of course, it's the full suite of NAVFAC execution of NAVFAC's mission with all of our capabilities.
Very good. As the NAVFAC PAC Commander, you bring not only a senior NAVFAC leader GRGB perspective, but also the fleet's GRGB perspective. From your point of view, what does Get Real, Get Better success look like in these organizations?
Yeah, Carol. So that's a great question. And my answer is there is no one specific definition of what right looks like. I believe that it is an inclusive approach. It's an environment the senior leader creates an environment in which people are willing to communicate and to collaborate and to discuss where we have shortfalls or shortcomings in the way that we operate. So the leader GRGB has many implied tasks for the senior leader, but the number one task is for us to create the conditions in which these problem-solving techniques can be implemented. And you do that through the course of your conversations, in the way that you execute or run your meetings. You do that in the way that you direct your staff. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that's true both from the fleet perspective and the NAVFAC SysCom perspective.
Okay. Who has been the biggest influence on your leadership style and why?
Tough question. There is no one person. I've worked for some fantastic senior leaders, both flag officers, generals, senior civilians, over the course of my career. So I really can't put it on one person in particular. But what I will tell you is that over a professional lifetime, I have gathered lessons learned and observations and tried to develop a leadership style that incorporates all of the positive attributes that I have observed, and then also mindful of the negative attributes that I've observed so that I can avoid those. Mm-hmm. One of my passions is I love to read history and biographies in particular, so I have read many of those over the years, and there are a number of historic figures that have inspired me to lead the way that I do.
Do you want to give an example of one? Anyone that really resonates?
Well, I mean, so as a Navy flag officer, military history is particularly of interest to me. So, General Dwight Eisenhower, General George Marshall, Admiral Nimitz, of course, in Hawaii. The house next to me is Admiral Nimitz's house. Admiral Spruance, in particular. He was what they have termed the quiet warrior. So very cerebral, but very decisive when he needed to be, particularly in the Battle of Midway.
Very interesting. So you've had 4 command tours at NMCB4, the 30th NCR, NAVFAC your AFCENT, and now NAVFAC PAC. How have these command tours shaped your leadership style?
Well, they've all done that. Each one of them has come at a different level of seniority, and with that different level of seniority comes a different level of complexity. And so I will tell you that as in my 4th command tour, which is now, as NAVFAC Pacific, I'm a much better leader than I was when I took command of NMCB4 many years ago. So I've learned along the way, and so the collective experiences in those, and NMCB4 primarily, well, exclusively a uniformed command to a flag level NAVFAC command that is primarily, not exclusively, but primarily civilian, the journey has been fruitful and it's been challenging at times, but I've used all four of those to create kind of the leadership style another addition or contribution to my leadership style.
And having two jobs can't be any easier.
Well, now the interesting thing with the two jobs that is not readily apparent is that I have two battle rhythms that I have to manage every day. So I have my own internal command responsibilities and oversight. NAVFAC Pacific has close to 10,000 employees, 7 subordinate commands. So I have that battle rhythm, if you will, that I have to maintain. And then I have United States Pacific Fleet battle rhythm, where I am on the staff. I'm one of the flag officers assigned to Pacific Fleet. So we find a way to get it done. I'm grateful for the deputies that I have because they help me kind of cover the gaps when I can't be there.
Yeah. So reflecting on all of those impressive command tours, can you describe how during each of those transitions you were able to build trust and respect and connect to your new team quickly?
Yeah. So I've always believed that the leader has, regardless of your seniority, or whether you're a manager or you're a flag officer, everybody has a responsibility to be, you have to listen and you have to be respectful. I have yet to find anybody in over 30 years of doing this that doesn't want to contribute in a positive way. And so you need to go into, as a leader, you need to go into this new team, if you will, listening to folks, really listening. Not just listening and waiting, thinking about what you're going to say in response, but you actually have to stop and listen. And then be respectful. As people are giving you input, you can't be dismissive. You need to incorporate those comments or those thoughts into your decision-making process. And so collaboration is key, and being inclusive. The other thing I will add is that you will build trust with people. Not everybody, every day is not perfect. And there are days when people are not going to be, maybe not at their best. And so the first thing you should always do as a leader is, regardless of the exchange that you're having or the meeting that you're engaged in, you should have empathy and try to understand where that person is coming from. And that creates a better starting point.
So empathy is a great word that I haven't heard much in Get Real, Get Better before. I find that word to be very key, especially for supervisors who may be watching this recording, because adapting, as you're listening to someone who needs to talk to you, may not be speaking in a way that you can immediately understand.
Yeah.
But having that empathy to take the time and the patience to listen to what they're saying, that's key. You already said that, but the empathy is the piece that you may need to apply, that you're not. Anyway, found that word is I haven't heard yet, and so that's fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important, and so kind of in the heat of the battle, if you will, every day, regardless of what you're working on, you're in a public works department, you're at a FEC, you're at an Echelon 3, or even here at headquarters, we work with some pretty complex issues that maybe on our best day would be considered semi-contentious.
Yeah.
And so the leader should never there's a term that I use, it's called never commit a suicide. And so if you're making assumptions about the folks you're interacting with or the problems that you're working on, I can guarantee you're not on target. And so listen to what they have to say, try to understand their perspective, and our leaders should always remember that they have to create, regardless of the issue that they're working with or the work unit that they're part of, you have to create a baseline from which to have future conversations. And so from that baseline, you will iterate to a solution or collaborate to a solution, however you want to describe it, but you create that baseline from which folks can then get some intellectual traction on.
Perfect. How did you assess the level of trust you had among your new teams? Were you able to delegate quickly?
Yeah. I do that through observation, and I try to get to know my folks. I am I get concerned that in the once again in our daily business and in the way, particularly after COVID, that all of our relationships have become more transactional in nature, and there's a dimension that is missing in a transactional relationship that does not allow us to get to our full potential as an individual or as a team. And so leaders have to make investments in their folks. They need to get to know them. That's what I do. And so I try to get to know every member of my ESG. I don't just want to know what they're working on. I would like to, I'm respectful of their privacy, but hey, where do you live? Do you have a hobby? Do you like dogs? So try to get to know people on a more human level and genuinely want to get to know them on a human level. I believe that people, they recognize that, they feel it. And then with that, you can begin to build trust. And from there, I think it's positive. And then once we get right back to what I said a few minutes ago, then you're in a respectful relationship with that person.
Yeah. How do you inspire and develop your team? How do you turn them into an effective team with high morale?
So my observation over the years is most of the things that we work on, or the situations that we find ourselves in, maybe from working with our employees, or maybe the problem that we're trying to solve, they're all very complex. And so the leader has the responsibility. They have to be the firewall. So we have a responsibility to speak in a clear and concise manner, such that we can take a complex problem and put it in plain speak, if you will, simplify it. And by doing that, in no way are we diminishing or dismissing the complexity of the issue. But what we're doing is we're creating the conditions for folks to get their mind around the problem we're trying to solve. I call that a beachhead. And then once you establish that beachhead, we begin to create unity of understanding, which creates unity of effort. And then unity of effort should lead us to success, lead us to a solution. I believe that most people crave or desire job satisfaction. They don't walk around every day and talk about it, but they can feel it. And they want to know that their work has purpose and has meaning, and they want to go home at night with the satisfaction that they made a difference. And so the leader has to recognize that. And so as you work these problems and you place these problems in context, and once again, not making assumptions that everybody understands every technical nuance associated with the problem, you can then get folks around the table to rally around it. You have to, and one thing that's happening that in these meetings that we have is that there are people in the room that have a better understanding of the problem than others. And maybe the person that does not have the greatest or deepest understanding has a lot to contribute if you can just get them oriented in the right direction. So I would ask all of our leaders, our managers, whether they're uniformed or not, you really have to practice on being able to tell the story. Tell the story so your folks can get their mind around the problem, they can dig into it, and then take these complex problems, break them down into pieces so you can establish you can have interim accomplishments. And then that leads to high morale because they feel that they're accomplishing something.
Yes, so that's a theme that I've been seeing in previous interviews that I've done. Progress, not perfection, digestible chunks, right? Yep. Solving the problem in manageable pieces. Translating it in a way that everyone can understand. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right?
Right.
Someone wise once told me that. If you can explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, then everyone will understand and we'll all be able to solve the problem together. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I'm going to switch topics a little bit. One of the critical components to building trust and building teams is psychological safety. It's often cited as a required component for developing high levels of trust within an organization. What is your approach to building a safe environment for your team, and how do you sustain that environment for your teams that you've been with for a long time?
So we could talk forever about different leadership styles and how leaders approach their jobs, but I believe there's two very broad general categories of leadership style or approach. And they both have pluses and minuses. One of them is the leader who is detached, perhaps not as engaged, because they're a senior leader, and it's maybe not appropriate for the senior leader to be having very granular type discussions at the deck plate. The upside to that is that the leader is insulated from, the folks working for this person don't really get to see the leader as a full 360, from a 360 perspective. Okay, so you won't get to see the faults of the leader, or where they may have, particularly if you have technical or technical shortcomings. So I guess that's an upside. The downside is people really don't get to know that leader. And so to your question about psychological safety, it's harder to get there with that type of leader, because they feel that they're guessing. The second type of leader, which is what I try to be, is I'm going to be open, and I'm going to be willing to think out loud with you. And so what's the downside of that? Well, the downside of that is maybe I'm not picking the right words, or perhaps my writing isn't clear, or I will share with everybody that there's a piece of this problem set that I'm not an expert in. So, but I'm comfortable with that. And so that's the downside. But the upside is that people, I believe, have a better understanding of who they're working for. And so as a result of that, they're going to be willing to take a chance to collaborate and give us, help us see their potential. There is I believe that, okay, what's a good team and what's a great team? A good team is one that does everything they're asked to do, and they do it very well. That's a good team. A great team is a team that does that, plus they take the initiative and lean forward. They look for the implied tasks associated with their responsibilities. That's what makes a great team. And so that's when you talk about psychological safety, if people have that, they're going to be that latter piece. So that's what I try to do with my teams.
Okay. Have you ever taken leadership of an organization with a low level of trust or respect? Can you describe what you saw and how you tackled improving it?
Yeah, so I have a number of times throughout my career. Whenever I run into a dynamic like that in a work unit, whether it's at my level, we can just make it up. Say if I had an issue with the ESG, or maybe in a department or division below that, here's what I do. I get everybody in a room. Let's talk. And I try to, and that doesn't always. You may have to do that a number of times, because the lack of trust within that work unit has been years, if not, in one instance that I had, 2 decades.
Wow.
Of where these people work in the same office and they have not talked to one another. They have raised their families, they've done all this stuff, and they haven't talked because of some issue that happened 20 years ago. So I try to get folks together. I get them together. I try to get them to speak to one another and look for common ground. And then from that, we create a beachhead, and then we can start to build on that. But also recognizing that I can't just come into the situation not having worked in that command for all this time that maybe these people have been in, and so we have to do it methodically. So.
Do you find that has been made harder through our hybrid working environment, or do you have an opinion on it since our hybrid working environment? Bringing people in seems more of a challenge, but just the way you talked about having a shared experience, just having people in the same room with each other these days seems like a challenge. Do you find that these disconnects are getting bigger, or how do you address those kinds of issues in today's environment? Do you have an opinion?
Absolutely. So the hybrid work environment, really driven by the COVID period of time, has created some challenges for our leaders and our managers. I would offer that it's actually harder to be an effective leader and manager in a hybrid or a complete virtual environment than when everyone's in the office, because you don't have that human interaction every day, because there's no way for me to say, Carol, is everything okay today?
Yeah.
You know, there's no way for me to really tell that through an MS Teams screen. And so we have to, but I also realize that we're not going back to the way things were 10, 15 years ago. I mean, it's just reality.
Yeah.
So we have to recognize where those seams, gaps, or risks are, and we have to lean into them. And so I would encourage our leaders to yeah, I used this word a few minutes ago, but we cannot allow things to become transactional only, because there's goodness from the human interaction that's not written down anywhere. And people, I believe it actually helps people's morale and their mental health, quite honestly.
Yeah, I found, just for myself, I found that having a camera on has helped tremendously. I've really tried to stay off of email, and having fights over email, having discussions about personal stuff on email. The camera has helped if you can't get that in-person sense.
Yeah, I would always, if I have a meeting and I have several, particularly in Hawaii, because a lot of the business we get is initiated from here in Washington, whether it's from the Pentagon or NAVFAC headquarters. Very rarely does anyone say, turn your cameras on.
Yeah.
But I turn mine on.
Yeah.
Because and whether everybody else does or not, I turn it on because I want them to see me, you know, as I'm standing there. And plus, it's a way to hold myself accountable.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the camera on, you're multitasking.
Right.
And so you're not really invested in the meeting that you're having, and you're
Yes.
kind of wasting their time and your own.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Well, we've talked quite a bit about lessons for managers, but do you have any other advice for our leaders in NAVFAC for improving their team's morale or performance?
Yeah, so as a leader, we have a responsibility that goes beyond just the work. And so what I mean by that is I'm not suggesting that you as a civilian or military leader, I'm not suggesting many hours after normal work hours, but you have a responsibility to know your people. Yeah. And you should care about your team, about your people, about your team, and you should care about them not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because a happy team is more productive. Yeah. And so you want people that are happy, at least satisfied, and they feel that they are part of this organization, that they have a future. The other thing I'll say for the leader is you want to be developing your people so they can move on and do bigger and better things. And you do not want to stifle that. That's the more noble cause of the leader is I want to develop these people so that someday they can replace me.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Very good. Well, thank you, Admiral Kilian, for your time and insights today. I really appreciate the time that you've spent giving us all of these great insights. Thank you to everybody who took time to listen and learn about our PAC commander, how he embraces Get Real, Get Better behaviors, and how to build learning teams through trust and respect. I look forward to sharing more with you next time. Signing off for now.